think putting the words together, crimmigration, has really done, like it lays the foundation for everybody being able to see just how mirror image these machines are.
The utilization of the immigration system to basically accomplish the same things that the criminal legal system does, which ultimately is to define certain individuals or the activities that certain individuals partake in as illegal to help justify the surveillance, control, and oppression of those people.
Texas is sort of home for a lot of the criminalization and enforcement tactics that are done against our communities. We have one of the highest populations of immigration detention, one of the highest populations of incarcerated folks.
The arrest to deportation pipeline has really become stronger and stronger because local governments and local law enforcement agencies are working so closely with ICE. And then on top of it, we have this anti-immigrant state government who has passed this law that ensures that that collaboration between local law enforcement and ICE continues happening.
What we call the Freedom City policies here in Austin that, basically restricted police arrest authority for low-level offenses where they could give a citation or a ticket instead, and also included a lot of additional kind of reporting requirements on the police about when they cooperate with ICE or give them any resources. Ultimately, kind of expanded the Miranda rights locally to make the police inform people that they don't have to reveal their immigration status. It was a really big, positive moment in this area because we were ultimately uniting all, people that are undocumented or have different immigration statuses and their causes and their concerns with, people unjustly harmed and arrested by the police for a whole host of other quote unquote crimes, and showing how, this system unjustly impacts Black people, brown people, indigenous people, poor people, and that we all need to have solidarity, right, in ending these practices and ensuring that our rights are protected.
In 2017, the Tarrant County Sheriff brought ICE into the jail in a more formal way. He signed on to the 287G agreement and actually ran his campaign on bringing ICE to the county jail. That's when the local efforts really started coming together from different organizations, different individuals in the community. And we got together and we started just making noise about it. We handed off literature. We did a lot of house meetings. We reached out to community members in other ways. We phone banked, and then we also went and testified at the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court, and we met with all the county commissioners, none of who were aware of that they had signed on to 287G, which was very disappointing, but not surprising. The day of the vote, we brought out about 70 to 100 people out to testify against it. We had several hours of testimony, and that was in 2019. From 2018 to 2019, we built up that base, and in 2019, we went out and went hard at court. The contract was renewed, but then the same thing happened this year where a lot of people came out. Despite COVID, they tried to dissuade us from testifying. They didn't allow telephone testifying, so we still showed up in court. This year, it got a lot more aggressive. We were pushed out by cops, and even more, we saw that whole, this was during the time of BLM protests. So, the cops pushing us out in the way that they did, it was very triggering for people.
So Cite and Release is certainly the primary campaign going on in San Antonio, specifically the fight for a Cite and Release ordinance. And the jail is a deadly place. County jails are quiet centers of the national mass incarceration crisis. COVID-19 has just added an extra layer to that, extra layer of danger, I should say, to that incarceration. So cite and release as a policy helps prevent people from being needlessly exposed to the danger of the Bexar County Jail. In Texas, as well as in San Antonio, 3 out of 4 inmates are being held pre-trial. It stretches from immigration to class struggles. More and more inmates are dying in Bexar County Jail in recent years, some merely for trespassing offenses, and some of those were being held solely because they could not afford bail. Cite and release itself is a 13-year-old state law, one that was passed by a Republican-led state legislature. However, it has remained up to cities and counties to opt into that policy. What we've been seeing, not only in San Antonio, but in other counties and cities as well, is self-proclaimed progressive council members or commissioners, standing in the way of that law and kind of acting in a way that is more conservative than the Texas state code. So we are fighting for an ordinance so that officers have guided discretion. It's not up to them if they cite and release somebody for an offense that is eligible. It is the law that they must.
A great example of what attorneys, when working with community organizers, can do is the Legal Services Fund that passed recently in Harris County. This is something that's been in the works for well over 2 years. The fund was created in February 2020, but wasn't funded until November 2020, when the county allocated $2 million to an Immigrant Legal Services Fund, which was a huge and amazing win. So the Immigration Legal Services Collaborative participated in a coalition called Houston Leads, which has both legal services organizations as well as some social services and advocate organizations, sort of working on a multi-point agenda to break down the arrest to deportation pipeline. The number of people in Houston who have representation while in detention is really minimal. Official numbers of who has representation make it seem higher. So we estimate that, really it's more like 10% of people who have an attorney from start to finish. And that's people with an attorney are more than 10 times as likely to be able to succeed on their case as those who don't.
Really, it was the guidance of Immigrant Legal Resource Center that kind of had us look at, this cite and release ordinance, this idea of keeping people out of jail in the first place. And it made perfect sense to us because we were overwhelmed that for such minor violations, people could be sent in this life-altering trajectory to be separated from their families, locked in cages for weeks on end and then sent to a country far from where their family and their life is. And so we understood the importance of reviewing, who it is that's getting locked up for these, very low-level offenses. Although, as an organization, we want to get to the point where no one is locked up in cages, of course. But this is kind of a step in that direction. So we, again, with the guidance of ILRC, started to procure data about who it was that was ending up locked up, for which offenses, and, found a stark racial disparity, which is not at all surprising given that, that's the case everywhere. And so we kind of sat on that data for a little bit, trying to figure out the best time to reveal it to the broader public, and learned that our police chief had been elevated to a new position and that someone else was going to be coming in to replace him as interim police chief. And so we decided as an organization that we would release that data just a few days before interim chief Bob Klett would go to the dais of city council to be approved as the head of our police department. And so it splashed on the front page, this data of how Black and brown people were being criminalized at rates far higher than white individuals in San Marcos for the very same offenses. And including the fact that in 2018, no one who is Black of 72 opportunities was given a citation for citation eligible offenses. All 72 of these individuals were instead arrested in 2018 here in San Marcos. And so there's quite a bit of media frenzy around that data. And it really made the case, I think, to city council of, well, when officers have full discretion on who they're going to lock up, we see racial patterns.
I really hope that we continue to diversify the coalitions, right, and continue to strengthen the coalitions with, multi-issues, intersectional issues, and continue to leave room and for other immigrants, right, and other CJ advocates to be part of the work.
Having a Democrat now in the White House and a new administration really deflates a lot of the local work, because a lot of the movement organizations just transition into hoping that the federal level will fix things, right? However, I think our local campaigns like Texas are going to exist for the next 4 years to actually challenge the Biden administration and their views on immigration.
The bridge between, I think, organizations, movements, people, all has to be a willingness to fight for collective liberation, right? It has to be one, just adopting a couple of ideas. And if you could adopt a couple of ideas and we can move forward, the willingness, I think, to not see, again, the two movements as somehow intersecting every now and then, right? That the entire premise is on the state adopting the position that we can criminalize behavior, that we can make certain behavior bad or wrong, and that we have the right to put whatever consequences we want on that. And that there are people who are courageous enough, again, people like LRC and Just Futures and Grassroots Leadership, who are willing to say no, that regardless of that, my liberation is also tied into that person's liberation. So I have to fight for the liberation of that individual if I want to be given liberation. Our liberation is tied together. And if I only fight for the liberation or the social standing or prestige or service or whatever for some individuals based on some certain characteristics, then I am allowing the state to continue that carving out. Right? It's all of us and none has to mean something.
We just cannot continuously be on the defense. If there is a people that is the most creative, that has learned to live in the wildest of conditions and still have these beautiful families, much like yours, much like mine, and we're all living, like it is Black and brown people. So like the hope would be that we don't spend all of that energy just reacting, but we use all of that creativity and intuition that is in our bones to really shape and be proactive against all of the bullshit that comes at us.